What is going on, guys? Shine as Lights coming at you, the podcast ministry of Aletheia Church. I'm your host, Adam Staub, a pastor at Aletheia Church. And as always, it is so great to be with you guys. And I've got with me today an expert in the topic that we are going to be covering.
I don't know about expert, Adam, but thanks for the thought.
My brother-in-law, Matt.
Hi, everybody. How are we doing tonight?
Everything's good. I think everybody's good. I'm answering for him. Everybody is great. Everybody's great.
Absolutely. Every day, all day.
So we're going to be covering a topic that I kind of gave, if you call them Easter eggs, on my last episode. I gave an Easter egg saying we're going to be doing 3 episodes on areas of forgotten ministry. And the first one was on neighboring, and we had talked about being, not neglecting right outside of your door, because it's easy to do, look for ministry overseas and in all these big places, or have these big home runs with either evangelism or ministry work or whatever. And we can't forget, though, that right outside of our door every single day, there is a place and a time for ministry with those around us.
Absolutely.
And so the second area, because I've thrown out a poll on Instagram about where people thought there were forgotten areas of ministry within the church. And surprisingly, there were 3 areas that came up that were very consistent. Everybody was saying this. And outside of my neighboring idea, which I was going to do anyway, the first one that the majority of people said was care for, and I know you don't like this word, but I'm throwing it out there,
Sure.
Care for the elderly or seniors. And so people were really saying that was an area that they felt was neglected. So I wanted to have somebody on who could speak to those issues. And of course, naturally, I thought first of you, knowing that not only had you felt called into that area of vocation, but you've spent over 12 years working with seniors in, varying capacity, activities, directing, coordinating activities, things like that, as well as various other service oriented things towards that community of people and everything. So I wanted to bring you on as kind of the expert.
Okay, not an expert, but I know more than you, so I'm the expert right now.
There we go. And I think it'll be very beneficial to others as well, because one thing I do know and respect about you, especially in this area, is I feel like it definitely takes a spiritual gifting to not just work in this area with other people, but to have the patience and to have there's a certain type of love that you have to express towards others that is very long-suffering and patient, and an amount of empathy that sometimes I know in my own heart, in my own life, I lack. And so I'm stretched by your gifts and your service in this area for sure.
Well, God's the one that gives the gifts, so no credit to me. You got your gifts that God gives you to use in ways, and that's what's really cool about the body of Christ, is he gives us all gifts so that we can reach out to people, not only in our body, but we can reach out to the lost as well. So fruit of the Spirit too. So.
Absolutely. And we need each other. Each other. So cool. Okay, well, start me off here. So how did you end up getting into this area and working with seniors?
Well, it starts about, over 10 years ago. I moved to this area from the Pittsburgh area, and I was kind of working part-time at a job, and really was, over time, just kind of losing money over a 6-month period. And I was really praying and saying, God, I thought you wanted me to be out in this area, but I'm slowly losing money. I'm probably going to have to move back to Pittsburgh. I was putting out some resumes, some job applications, and nothing seemed to come my way. And kind of funny, after a church service, one day I was kind of, my faith wasn't where it should have been, and I was a little exasperated, and I just took a long walk and was like, God, I need a job. And I walked by this nursing home, and I saw that they were hiring, and I was like, oh, I don't care right now. I'm walking and venting right now. So I kind of kept walking and venting, and when I was done, I actually lived practically across the street from the nursing home, so I passed it again, and I thought, well, I'll go in and see what they're looking for. And after going in, praying about it, they had an opportunity, a real part-time opportunity, which in 3 months it went to full-time, and kind of never looked back since. So yeah, kind of like a ministry outreach where I have kind of that background, and so getting to work one on one with people in a way where they really need someone, to love them and to to guide them and care for them. It's been great. So
Yeah, and just because I know a little bit of your background, now you've gone through ministry school and things like that, and also even almost to the point of ordination, choosing not to go that route and everything. But as far as credentials come, like you've gone that route, and we're really originally looking to potentially be a chaplain and somebody that was interacting on that level spiritually with people anyway, right?
yeah, the chaplain thing wasn't until after I actually started working at the nursing home, because I realized what a great need and what a great opportunity to do that. And so, yeah, I prayed about it, didn't think that God wanted to lead me into, being a minister right then and there. And after thinking about being a chaplain, I was like, okay, God, I need to go back to school, finish my bachelor's degree, and still something where it's like, no, that's not God's direction. So, I just kept doing what I was doing that I felt like, God was leading me to do at the time. So, yep.
Awesome. Okay. So when it comes to this area, okay, so if people were reaching out, I would ask, maybe in your opinion, but just in general, why do you think this is such an area that is in need of ministry?
Sure. Well, when we talk about the Great Commission, we talk about making disciples, we talk about reaching the lost. We talk about brothers and sisters in Christ caring for each other. And I think because sometimes we don't always see, especially if someone's in, I don't like to say facility, maybe they like to say more like a community. If someone's in a retirement community, which could be, their own cottage, it could be an apartment, it could be a personal care home or a nursing home. Regardless of where they're at, there's brothers and sisters in Christ that are living there, or people who aren't saved. And sometimes people tend to, out of sight, out of mind, they might not see Mr. So-and-so coming to church much anymore or not at all. And so, again, unless we're intentional thinking about it, these people are there. And so then it's an easy opportunity sometimes, because we can, go right to where they're at. And a lot of times they're very willing to, if anybody comes by, that has care and love in their heart, that listens to them, that wants to sit down and help them out with, whatever, whether it's helping them, with groceries, or helping them, cut their grass, or, if they're at a neighborhood like a nursing home, someone that, again, will just spend time with them. They're very open, and what a great way, again, just to show Christ's love and to potentially lead someone to the Lord who's not already saved.
So, I mean, we might be taking a step back here just a little bit, but I was thinking about this when you were talking. And of course, man, I just got done. I've been studying like a thing on communication. I'm like, you're not supposed to be thinking about other things, your reply when somebody else is talking.
Sure.
Anywho. But, see, and now I forget it, because now the train leaves the station. I don't even remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
But, oh, come on, Adam. It was...
I'll just let you know, as I was talking, I was losing my train of thought, and I was like, all right, Jesus, let's bring it back. Where was I going?
Jesus, take the wheel. Take the brain wheel. So, yeah, well, that didn't help me at all. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about, I wanted to give people, oh, I do remember. Okay. So, why do you, I mean, being in a community, as you've worked in communities and things like that, do you think there's something in our culture that has lended to this becoming more of an area in need for ministry than in times in the past when the family unit was kind of a little bit more together?
Yeah, so years ago, you didn't have nursing homes. I think nursing homes didn't come into play till maybe 100 years ago. And it was, I don't know if it was like old hospitals that they turned into these centers where people could go to, some who had, quote unquote dementia, or, times were hard or whatever. But yeah, years ago, families were the main ones to take care, of their loved ones. And that was, I think a huge, it was a great responsibility, but, you cared for your parents, your grandparents, and maybe, years ago, some people didn't live as long as they do these days. So now, between the, the medical advancements and stuff, you have people living a lot longer. And so,
sure,
things have kind of change some.
I'm sure there's a lot of factors to it, and the way people have chosen to live their lifestyles and different things like that, has made it to the point where we do have a vast population that has now found themselves kind of secluded from the rest of society, that in different times in the past, it wasn't really like that,
And a lot of this community, nursing homes or personal care homes these days really try to involve the community. They reach out to them where there's a lot of organizations and groups, church groups, various ones that come in to really assist and do one-on-one or group things with the people there, or they'll take the people out to they'll go to restaurants, or they'll go to shows, or they'll go to all sorts of things to kind of bridge that gap so that there's less of that separation or
Sure.
walls that are keeping some from each other.
Sure, definitely. So I guess in line with all that then, what are the different levels? When we're talking about care for seniors, what are some different levels that people find themselves in different areas of need then?
Sure. So some of the first ones we could think of is people who, and I've got notes here to kind of keep me on track, but there are family members that we have that are maybe living at home. There could be people at our church that are, again, seniors that are retired that are still living at home. And some of those people, I think, and you would hope, if they're Christians, that they have strong relationships with God, where they're still giving back to us, younger generation people by, imparting their wisdom and, maybe taking us out for meals and wanting to teach us things that they've learned over the years. But then, there's some people who quite aren't there, spiritually. They're not, Paul or, one of the Marys or, Peter or someone like that. And so, so they might feel like if they're living at home or, specifically at home, whether they're, strong Christians or not, that they might feel because they're not working full time maybe anymore or working at all, that they might feel like they don't have as much of a purpose, They might just kind of be going through the motions of watching TV and maybe coming to a church service on a Sunday. So again, some people who are maybe widows, their loved one has died. There's a great need right there just to, if anybody is at, you go to church with someone or you have a family member, man, give them a call. If you see them at your church meeting, go out of your way to initiate conversation with them. They have so many years of experience, not only with family, but with their marriages. A lot of them have been married for 50 plus years, and so can have great wisdom to teach us stuff that they've learned. If you're in a marriage, or if you have kids, you can ask them questions about that. Some people need help maybe with basic stuff, like they have a little lawn but just need some help cutting the grass, or need some help with groceries, or some basic stuff that when people are seniors living at home, they could use, even someone stopping by just to say hi or shoot them a letter. They're not going to be on, some of them aren't going to be on Facebook or on different messaging. They might not have a smartphone, but don't judge them, based on their appearance. I know the book of James talks about, if someone comes into your gathering and they're rich and they have a ring on their finger, and we decide, we're going to treat them special. And when someone comes in poor and, they might not have the best clothes on, we treat them differently. Like James says, that's a sin. And I think if we as well, if we're, looking at people who are, older than us, and we judge them different, or we think, they're a has-been, or, and I don't think we would actually think that, but that might be behind in our mind, like, maybe they can't really help us, so I'm not going to go out of my way to reach them.
Well, we do kind of live in a culture that has began to separate itself into the cliques of even age. So as much as you say maybe that's not something we would think, I think subconsciously you do tend to see that even within church gatherings. This is not right that I'm saying. I think you do see it where the teens hang out and the couples with kids hang out, and the elderly are either left by themselves or they're hanging out or whatever. And I think we ought to be, and what it sounds like you're saying is we ought to be intentional about not waiting for them to make the connections, which of course you can, push the responsibility over there. And don't they know that Titus says that the older women are to teach the younger women? They should be coming to me. No, we can take responsibility. We who are in the previous generation can value that wisdom enough to go seek out after it, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing I've heard churches do, which probably helps, but then also builds up a barrier, is some churches have like a traditional service and then a contemporary service, which I think can be good, because people can kind of worship God, if you want to say, in a way that they're more comfortable with. But then you have some generations hanging out only with their generation, and some of the other generations, some of the ones going to the contemporary one, not necessarily hanging around to visit some of the people who are a little older. So, and those can be great things, and they probably really are. And it might be good sometimes for people that do both of those to jump to some of the other services just to be able to connect with more people and, minister to their brothers and sisters in Christ.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so that was basically that first level we were talking. These are still people who are at home, who are still attending churches and everything like that. They're really among us, but they are our elders in a good way. They're not elderly. They are our elders.
Let me explain that too. I heard someone recently say that if you call someone elderly, like they took a survey and like 9 out of 10 people, when they picture elderly, they picture someone kind of really like decrepit and they don't remember anything and they can't add like they're on the last stages of life. And so I was told, maybe call them seniors, or there's some other things you can say other than maybe elderly. So that's why I'm like pushing that.
Definitely. No, that's good. Okay, so what's maybe the next level then of some people that we can minister to who may be in another unique situation still within this umbrella?
Sure. So sometimes for various reasons, and we won't maybe go into all that today, is if maybe a family cannot, care for their parents, and so or they live far away, and for whatever reason, again, we're not going to maybe go down there today, but they have to be at a place where it's like a retirement community where they have their own cottage, or maybe they're in a personal care home, where they need someone to cook and clean for them and help them with medicine, or they're in a nursing home because physically we could talk about dementia. There's a lot of things that could go on that they just need that extra help. And so what a great opportunity there to if they are in your family and they're at a place like this, again, it's so easy to pick up the phone, give them a call, go visit them, you can take them out for a walk. So much conversation you can have. So many times I know working in nursing homes, man, when a family comes to visit their loved ones, especially if they bring little kids with them, man, people there just light up. They just love it. They love when their family, takes a moment out of their day to reach out. But I know it just doesn't have to be family. I know this one guy, he lives at a cottage, and someone that he used to work with, they're not related at all, but every night this lady, I'm sure she's a good Christian lady, she calls him every night, and he just thinks the world of this lady, and this lady, I run into her as well, and I, with HIPAA, you got to watch with saying names and stuff, but it's just so cool to see that connection and how meaningful it is to that guy, that this person is reaching out. So there's so many things, if they're our family, that we can go in there. If they have pictures on the wall, we get a chance to ask them about that. And that's one of the cool things that I would encourage people. Just last night I was looking on YouTube, and there's some videos of some pictures from back in the 1800s or early 1900s, but they were all colorized. And it's amazing, at least to me, and anybody could check out, any of these probably YouTube videos, is that when you see some of I think when I see black and white pictures, automatically I think of this big separation between me and them. But if you see some of these pictures that are in color, all of a sudden you're like, wow, it brings a closeness or a connectedness to me, at least when I see that, and I'm like, they're like right where I was.
Yeah.
It's like they're right there, and that's like 100 years ago. And so when you go, you have family there, and they have pictures. Ask them about it, and almost in your mind, don't picture them maybe of how they are right now or how they look, because they might be hunched over, they might have had a stroke, they might have a lot of things mentally going on that, if we look at them as they are, we might be quick to judge them. But if you look on the wall and you see this picture of when they were married, sure, and you see these people that are young and vibrant and smiling, and if we could kind of picture them like that, I think it goes a long way to help us to think that they're, just because they're older now, that they don't have any less value than, when they were, our age, or, and stuff like that. So yeah, there's,
can I just hit on that? No, because I think that's a really good point, because I mean, if I'm being honest and like a little vulnerable or whatever about it all, I think that's a hang up sometimes. Like, we look, even if it's somebody in our family, we're looking at where they are now, and it may even in a way frighten us, or just sometimes we don't even know how to compartmentalize it as we're processing what has happened to this loved one, over the years, and what, just the reality of the end, someone getting towards the end of life or whatever it is. Sure. And so changing that in our mindset a little bit of just not just remembering, who they were and everything like that, but kind of reflecting on that purposefully, so that we can connect in those areas really will help, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think of, when God looks at us, he doesn't see us in all of our sin, but if we're, saved, by the blood of Jesus, he looks at us and he sees Jesus. And, I would hope too, when people look at me, they don't necessarily see all my, flaws with my hair or sure, whatever, but they see me as, God sees me, and, would love me unconditionally. And the same with someone in those shoes as well. If they're seniors, we don't look at them as they are, but who they are in Christ, yeah, and treat them accordingly.
Yeah, that's good. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no,
I just thought
I like
that was a good point to kind of hammer that home.
Sure.
Okay.
Then one other thing I could think of is if they're not family, but they're at a retirement community, one awesome way that we could reach out to them is through volunteering. I used to help coordinate the volunteers at the one place I was at, but some of the larger places have their own volunteer coordinators. But it's such an easy way. I mean, you got to pass a background check and do an application and stuff. But what an awesome open door that can be for people to. There's various ways at some of these communities, but what a great way to show Christ's love and to do stuff, whether in groups or one-on-one with people. So I mean, you can do potentially all the way from like Bibles. You can volunteer and come in and do Bible studies. You can do one-on-one Bible readings with people. You can do just friendly visits where you get a chance to just sit and listen and ask questions, ask them about, maybe a lot of people in the generations at these places now, or like the World War II generation. So you can ask them questions about that if they're willing to open up and talk, because some of them definitely don't want to, but you can bring in dogs and cats to visit some of these people.
Kids, you were saying kids. Yeah.
I have a friend. She's an awesome lady that I worked with, but also volunteered. Her name is Gail, and she has what she calls a praying paws ministry. And she has a baby stroller, but she has her cat in there, and she goes to different places with her cat and just visits people and just loves on people. And it's just what an awesome ministry opportunity that she has. But there's ways where, again, you're sitting and talking maybe with someone one-on-one as a friendly visitor, and you get a chance to, they might open up about something, and a lot of places are from my perspective, don't say, well, you can't pray with people or this or that. So you can really minister and pray for people and just, be that shoulder for them to cry on potentially. And I mean, I've seen a lot of awesome things and people I've worked with that, it just spiritually too, like reaching out to people and making it seems like a real difference in people's lives.
So you organized this kind of stuff, and you were an activities director for a while. Are a lot of people coming in and doing that stuff?
Yes.
I'm talking in the church. I'm sorry. Like, are there a lot of people who are coming in and doing that, or is it scarce, or what's it like?
I guess it's hard to say compared to all the Christians that are in the community how many are coming in to volunteer. But I mean, the place I was at, we had a decent number of people who were Christians. Not everybody was, but some really awesome Christians that volunteered. The one place is like a Christian retirement community, and there's a lot of people who live in some of the cottages there that volunteer. I mean, they have hundreds of volunteers, and probably the vast majority are Christians. So, yeah, there can be a good number of Christians, and I would think Christians are probably some of the more of the majority of people that might be volunteering at some of these places, which I think's really good to see.
How about the reality of, because we all know when it comes to evangelism and things like that, sometimes, when you say going door to door, doing evangelism, right away, it's usually not Christians. It's, Jehovah's Witnesses or more, being very evangelistically, having zeal in that area. Do you see a lot of that as well? Is this a mission field that just to be real about the situation, that some of the cults also go into and have influence and everything like that?
Yeah, I know when I was activity director at the one place, there was a lady that came in from, it was either Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon group, and they wanted to, do like a Bible study, and I didn't know it was them at first until I finally got enough information, and I, thanked them for coming, but I knew in my mind, no, we're not going down this trail.
You were the police. You got to vet them. I'm cutting this off.
But it was cool, the different churches that would come in to do actual church services. Yeah. And I think a lot of times that's where they would, minister to people maybe after the service one-on-one. And they gave a lot of, invitations for people to accept Christ and, shared the gospel a lot in those settings. So yeah, and two, if you volunteer, that doesn't necessarily mean you go door to door and you just preach the gospel to everybody. That might be definitely like frowned upon. Sure. But if you're there to show love to people, regardless if they're a Christian or not, you never know when God might prompt you to say something, or there could be a variety of things that are permissible to do, where it's just not, again, like you're just standing by the nurse's station and with preaching your pulpit there, open air preaching right then and there.
So the process then is, it seems, more relational. Like when you starting out, unless you're coming in directly to do a Bible study or something like that. Let me ask you this question. So say somebody out there is like, man, I'd love to go in and do a Bible study or whatever. What is the process for somebody to be able to do something like that? Or maybe they just ask the question or say in their head, I'd like to go in and volunteer to just meet people and build relationships.
Yeah.
Can somebody go do that? And do they in essence just show up at the door of somebody and say, hey, I'm Adam, I'd like to get to know you, or how does that work?
It's funny, the one place I worked at, they said, oh, we saw in the newspaper you're looking for volunteers and we'd like to come and help. And I would talk to the administrator and we're like, we never put anything in the newspaper. These people are just showing up. But it's as easy as calling up a place, and asking either for whoever the volunteer coordinator is. A lot of times it might be the activity director. Again, at a bigger place, they might have their own volunteer coordinator. But it's as easy as calling them up and saying, hey, I'd like to volunteer. I'd really love to, show love to people. And, what's the process here? And they might say, well, fill out this application. We want to sit down and kind of maybe do an interview to see where some of your giftings are at, to maybe where that matches, where some of the needs are at this place. Do a background check, and it could be as easy as that, and they have you in. Some places are probably a little more stringent in what they do, but feel free just to call up a place and just ask,
Are they going to assign you to something, or can you kind of request, here's my giftings, can I help in this area, or where? I guess the idea is, where do you need help? Yeah,
and so I've only worked at two places for my 10 plus years. So the one place was definitely when I was taking volunteers, I had a list of needs that we had, and as people came in and they kind of had what they wrote down that they'd like to do and their skills, as much as I could, I would match that up. Now, if they did something completely different, but something that I felt could be profitable, then I might say, okay, yeah, we could use that. Normally, though, it would be someone who at least was like 16 years old, but someone who was mature if they were that young. Really, nobody younger than that. And, it would depend on the people's availability. They might say, oh, I can only come in on Saturdays, and maybe I didn't have any staff there on Saturdays to kind of supervise. So it was well, no, I don't think right now, we could use you. So it was a lot of, a mixture of what the volunteer had to offer and kind of what the need that we had.
Now, when let's see, I forgot what I was going to say again.
Sure.
Okay. That was all really good stuff. So what group were we covering right there? That was the group that is in the homes,
like a retirement
community,
not necessarily family, but
okay.
Or our brothers and sisters, but ways that we can reach out just to people in the community, which we might find out afterwards they're our brothers and sisters in Christ. They just belong to a different congregation, or they might not be a Christian at all. That reminded me.
Okay, so do you guys on your end, like the staff end, is there some kind of like membership role or something that if somebody would say, I want to come volunteer, or I'm coming to visit, can they find out who are Christians in there? Maybe they feel just called to go encourage and get to know Christians. Can they say, am I allowed to meet with the Christians in here? Or like, do you know who the Christians are or who aren't, so that if somebody were coming, could they say, man, I'd love to go encourage Mary, who you say is a Christian?
Yeah, and so that's where it might depend on the place. I know there's definitely HIPAA regulations as far as what all you can say, but I think that it would be easy to say, like, oh, as being an activity director, after they've completed the whole volunteer process and followed, the training and different things, that, yeah, these people go regularly to the church services, or they've attended these church services before, so chances are they're probably, a Christian. Or if not, hopefully they're on their way there. So yeah, maybe these are some of the people that you could, spend some one-on-one time with.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking almost like a hospital. You know what I mean? Like a chaplain will come into a hospital and he can basically say, like, tell me who the Christian, because people put like a marking, like I wouldn't mind being visited by a minister or something like that. I didn't know if there was something like that in place where if somebody came and said, I'm here to encourage Christians, they could be pointed in the right direction and they could come in and say, hi, I'm Matt, I'm Adam, whatever, I'm a Christian, and I just really wanted to come encourage you today. Can I pray for you? Can I do, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's probably really a pretty good chance that that's going to happen. Like the whoever's in charge could lead someone who says that right into the right places. Cool. Because I think they would do that as well if someone said, oh, Buddhist, are there any Buddhists here? I'd like to reach out to the Buddhists, and so yeah, I think that again, talk to whoever's in charge, but I think that they would definitely help with that.
I'm just thinking of other options, like for somebody that maybe is like, I would like to do something like this. Maybe it's not an activity or a Bible study, but boy, I know there's got to be Christians in there, and I'm a good conversation. I'm a good listener. I just like to go say, hi, I'm Adam. Tell me a little bit about yourself. We're brother and sister in Christ. You know what I mean?
Yep, and that's definitely another way. I know other ways that people volunteer as well is maybe they play a musical instrument that they can come in and play, music for the people, or do some singing. And then any of the activities, I mean, the staff normally, encourages volunteers to help. Some people can't do all the activities themselves, whether it's bingo or crafts, and having someone along just to spend some one-on-one time and help them. I mean, what a great way to serve someone and show them Christ's love that could maybe open doors, for them to want to learn more about you, and why are you here? Why are you showing this love to me?
Yeah.
So, but any of the activities, and there's tons of them, that someone can volunteer and come in and help with. even if you're not the greatest at it, even if you're not good at it, you can still come and do some one-on-one stuff with people as maybe they're doing an activity to really, they'll take it. They're glad pretty much to have you.
Yeah. I don't know if this is the next category, but you correct me if there's one in between. But there's also another level of, I would put it in a separate category of people who are more in like an assisted area, or they are, going through things like Alzheimer's or dementia where they need some extra special care. Is there any like special ministry that people could do for them? Is there a greater way they could help?
Yeah, and I was thinking with the notes that maybe you put for this message today, I know a lady who does a lot of outreach as far as memory care at one of the places that that I work at, and she, I think, has a lot of great resources that can be available that I'm going to check with her. I should have before we did this, but I can check with her to find out some just helpful things when people maybe are going through, Alzheimer's is just one form of dementia, and there's many of them out there. So yeah, it would take more of a specialized person who probably has some experience with not dealing with, but serving people who have some form of dementia, who might be in what you would call like a sheltered care kind of a unit that stays locked. Just for the safety of the people, you would need more probably specialized skills to volunteer and help out in those areas.
So that's not the place somebody goes and starts. That's
not normally.
Okay.
Not normally.
Yeah.
I know for me, when I was helping volunteers, one lady said, she had 10 years working at like a local mental health, place, and so I knew, she would probably be really good with helping people who are in this condition. And a lot of times I'd even walk volunteers around before they were volunteers and get a chance to meet some of the different people, and I would see how they would react to someone who maybe has some form of dementia where, they can't talk much, or they're in a reclined wheelchair, a lot, and, how are they, reacting, and how are they, reaching out of themselves to build a connection with some people who other people might, because they're not used to it,
Right.
might be just a little taken aback by, seeing someone who, is just not walking around talking like we're used to, or someone who maybe, repeats themselves a lot.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's an area that it's different. And sometimes we don't, either think about it enough beforehand, or we're just not sure how we're going to react to it. But it can be intimidating, or whatever the word is, when you see, especially somebody talking back to a family member or whatever, who you knew them one way, and, as the results of living in a fallen world, before they go on, as Christians to glory or whatever, our minds can go and things like that happen. And so, those people still need love, and they need cared for. And that's where I think sometimes we probably do neglect the fact that it's very easy to almost set them somewhere and forget about them or whatever. And I know that sounds horrible, but sometimes if we're not careful, that can be our mentality and our thought process in it. Forget, but someone somewhere, whether it be a person at the nursing facility or somebody who's volunteering and coming, is hopefully showing that person love, because they still need, in every stage of life, that person is made in the image of God and deserves love and care and respect.
Absolutely. I know right now there's a kind of a big push in America, and it started in Europe. They call it, I think, the Dementia Friendly America, where they're doing a lot right now to reach out even to local businesses and stuff to help assist them to be able to be more, again, friendly with people who have dementia. So I heard one place, I think it's up in Connecticut, there's a restaurant up there that someone maybe whose loved one has dementia, they can call up this restaurant and say they'd like one of the purple ticket tables. And so what the restaurant will do is they'll they'll have a table set off kind of not so close to all the hustle and bustle of the rest of the restaurant. They'll make the table settings pretty, some good contrast, not a lot of options. They'll give the people that come to sit there a menu that doesn't have 40,000 options of what to eat, but just a simplistic menu. The waiter, the waitress has been trained as far as making eye contact, or just being familiar enough that maybe they need to talk a little slower, or they might have to repeat themselves, and to be okay with that, and just showing a lot of love. So there is programs out there to help educate people as far as how to better again serve people who unfortunately are at that state right now in their lives. And there's people could still have good quality of life even if they have dementia, and it's a disease of the mind, and there's a lot of things to that, but there's some progress that's coming around to help educate people to help with that better.
And that trial is an opportunity for those of us around those people to really, for God to chip away and to grow us in the fruit of the Spirit, because it takes extra love, it takes extra patience, you know what I mean? It takes finding joy in being around them and helping and ministering, and I'll just not even just help, ministering to those people.
Yeah, and I know, my personal family, a grandparent of mine who had some form of, it seemed like some kind of dementia, and I know my mother did a ton as far as reaching out to her, and kept her at home, and did as much care for her as she could, and really helped her out. And I wish looking back I could have done more to maybe assist with that, but to say as well that the ministry is not only to the person who's a senior, but really there's a huge ministry to the caregiver as well. Yeah. And just for people that are listening, if someone at your church who this person's ministering to their mom or dad or grandparent, that caregiver is probably sometimes can get very maybe exhausted physically, or might feel like there's not a lot of help, and there's resources out there for them to reach out to. But don't forget to reach out to those people who are the caregivers, and offer to bring a meal by to maybe help them, or just to any way that they could serve them, or treat them out to a weekend away, because you might be willing to help spend time with their loved one, just so that they get a chance as well to kind of refresh and recoup, to reach out to their loved
So that's a way we can bear a burden within the body too, is when there's someone in your local church, in your body, a neighbor, whatever it is, who is serving someone else in this way. Also remember, they're probably running on fumes as well, and how can we help them and help minister in both scenarios? There's a full-orbed area of ministry, it sounds like here.
And sometimes I call it like some people are sandwiched in between their parents or grandparents are in a hard spot with something like a dementia, and that at the same time they still might be raising kids as well, and so it's like they're helping in both ends, and so someone helping them out can really mean a lot.
Yeah, that's really good. So before we move on, because I know we've kind of been hammering this, but I saw a comment come in saying that this area of dementia was somewhere that they were dealing with right now, and so this is all kind of hitting close to home. Because you've worked with a lot of people who have dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that, can you give some tips for people that have maybe are experiencing what it's like for the first time to care for somebody who's going through that, or who maybe is a little intimidated even at the idea of or the thought of, what do I even do? What do I talk about? What do I say? Like, what if they get angry? I've been around as well. Like, sometimes they get angry and say things they don't mean, you know what I mean? Or they get violent or whatever. What are maybe some tips you can give people that would help in that scenario?
Sure. And I think it can be again, I haven't been in that place with maybe a parent, but a grandparent. But at the time, I already had some years of experience working with that population. So one of the first things, and like I said, I'd like to leave in the notes here some different resources. But I think one of the best things to do is to reach out to one of these places that can help give you material and information that can kind of walk you down the path of, unless God does, unless something miraculous happens, like this is kind of the stages of where things are at. I mean, talking to the person's doctor, I think a doctor can help as well. But the more education you can get on this, I think the better, because you're going to know kind of what some of these stages are. A doctor can give like a diagnosis potentially of what kind of, if someone has dementia, like in Alzheimer's, what are those stages, and again, just materials so that where, again, the path that things are going to get to. So it's kind of tough because of, depending if someone's first finding out their loved one has that. I mean, there's different medicines and stuff that a doctor might recommend, but I think one of the things is you don't want to treat the person different or like spaz out or oh, this is the end of the world, or think well, they're gonna you start to go all the way to E, F, and G, when really you're at A, and you need to show that your loved one, that you love them, that you're going to be there, you're going to help them through this process, and necessarily don't treat them any different. But then I'd say on your end, get some resources, so even just basic stuff, what to do, as far as if they're start having trouble, maybe putting their clothes on, or they can't find their car keys. There's ways that you can handle those situations that where you're not getting flustered or overwhelmed, or you've educated yourself, so you kind of know that this probably is going to go with the territory, unfortunately.
Sure.
But,
Yeah.
but so that you can handle those situations, appropriately. And someone who's first maybe dealing with this, they probably never have been in these shoes before. Right. So everything's going to be new to them as far as, what to expect. So education is, I think, a huge thing.
So you've built relationships. I'm sorry, I just want to hit on one more thing. You've built relationships with people. So it's not like they're family, but even in your vocation, you've built a form of relationship with people where you care about them and you love them, and you've also had those same people, happy and nice with you, and then curse you out in the next month. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, give me a nugget here. How do you detach in your mind from what's going on, from the how do you do that?
Well, I think I heard you and someone else mention this recently, that when we interact with anybody, something that we should always probably do before we even say anything to anybody is, in our mind, say "I love you" to that person, just even mentally. But I did this a couple times this week, since I heard you and someone else mention this, and it's helped me to connect with people and almost see people a little different. I think for me, the natural thing has been to kind of detach a little bit of how this person is treating me right now. I kind of detach a little from that to know that, okay, I love this person. They don't mean this personally. So right. This behavior maybe right now, I'm just gonna, I know it's really not them. I'm gonna, laugh it off, not in front of them, but, sure. I know inside, like this one guy thought that I was a doctor and thought that I gave him like drugs and sure. not good drugs, and that he's and so every time he saw me, he would cuss me out, and so I knew, like, if I went by his room, I had to walk quick, or if I was at the desk, my head was all the way down so this guy couldn't see me. And his son came in a lot, and I got a chance to talk to him, and the son thought it was so funny. Like, I don't know why my dad is like this, but he is. And I just learned to not laugh at them, but learn to kind of find the joy in all the different situations, including something like that. Yeah. So
okay, I just thought that might be helpful for people, because again, especially when it's a loved one and you start seeing this radical change that sometimes does happen, there's you got to be able to process it,
and
right?
it's tough, and I can't say that I know the exact place of where you detach a little bit, but you still love the person, and it's hard because you're like, oh, mom would never have done this or never would have pushed me. And again, I had some of that with one of my grandparents, and I know it was hard for me. So part of me, like I said, detached some, but still being willing to be with her and to show her love, regardless of how they were treating me. And I think go back to Jesus said, specifically with enemies, turning the other cheek. But, when people are mistreating us, how much we can still love them, but then knowing that these people really aren't meaning to mistreat us. It's just, again, unfortunately, a part of the disease that can come out.
And again, why this is an area of ministry. I would put it in a similar category of caring for the maybe mentally challenged young people, or somebody is born into this world with deficiencies in a certain area, and it takes, that is an area of ministry, to love them and to care for them and to bring them up and to nurture them in the word and in sometimes even in life, in dressing them, you know what I mean? And again, it's a sanctifying work that God does within us and in our hearts and towards these people.
And it's so cool because as you spend time with people, especially if they're at a retirement community, you sometimes you see them more than their own family sees them. And when they look at you, they think of family. And the love that you can show to these people. I mean, who knows, in eternity future, like, and that's something that always encouraged me. And it's one of the, I don't know if the word is faux pas, but one of the things that people, or the caveat of going into some of these places, someone volunteering might say like, oh, like this person, they might die, and I don't know if I'm going to be how I'm going to mentally handle that. And I know for myself, especially reaching out to people who are Christians, and a lot of the places I worked at, a lot of people seemed like they were Christians, is I knew, okay, I showed love to Mrs. So-and-so, and yeah, she passed, and it is hard, but I'm like looking forward to heaven and glory, where I'm going to see them again, and they're going to say, hey, you remember me? I used to cuss you out, and I used to spit on you, and I pinch you or whatever, and you were just always smiling at me, and you always encouraged me, and just thank you so much. I know I was bad. I'm so sorry, or whatever, but like, you'll see these people in their glorified bodies, and just that reunion in heaven. I think because of the love that you can show to these people, and can be such an awesome thing. So.
Yeah, and keeping in mind, and maybe we should have said this earlier, this is one of the areas of the least of these, you know what I mean, where we care for the body of Christ, and we are caring for Christ in these people.
Yeah, I know Jesus said like true religion is reaching out to orphans and widows, and abstaining, staying away from sin. And so when people don't have parents around, or when people's loved ones have passed, not just monetarily, but there's so many other ways that we can, reach out and really show them God to them than, doing, a lot of things that we mentioned.
Definitely. Okay, well, how about some do's and don'ts? Say somebody wants to step into this and get involved in everything. What are just some helpful tips from the inside that people should gravitate towards, and maybe what should they stay away from?
Sure. And some of these things I think we already mentioned, but I'd say as much as you can, always smile. People who potentially are at a nursing home, they've had so much stripped away from them in their lives, not only their health, they don't see their family much, they're not at their home anymore. They might not be able to change their clothes anymore. Someone has to give them medicine, cook for them, things that they were able to do 20, 30 years ago. A lot of that they might not be able to do anymore. And so as much as you can, when you go in to meet people, just smile, stay on the lighter side of things. Don't call them by a nickname unless they say it's okay to. That's one of the things. Well, do your best to remember their names, and you could always say, okay, Mr. So and so, do you go by that or do you go by your first name? And whatever they say, go by. Some people, I know one lady I asked that to, and she looked at me. She said, well, judging by your age, you better call me Mrs. So and so. And I said, okay, Mrs. So and so. And since then, that's all I call her. You know. Don't always, if you're going to volunteer, or even with a family member, if they're at a nursing home, maybe double check if you're going to give them like food or something to drink, because some people are on like a puree diet, or they're on a thickened liquid diet where they just can't drink water because they could choke. And so you gotta definitely watch stuff like that.
Interesting.
Make sure to get down on their level. If you're standing up and they're in a wheelchair or sitting in a chair, it's a lot harder to connect with people that way. So, as much as you can, if they're in a wheelchair, sit right next to them or kneel next to them. Make good eye contact. Don't just like surprise them, like, come up and say, hey, like you might have to, stand back, kind of, announce yourself, and then, come up to them slowly. Let's see. Again, I took notes on some of this stuff. Again, keep things confidential. The next one I won't go into because I'm not... I just say wash your hands. Make sure to wash your hands. Adam knows.
Matt's a germaphobe.
Well,
that's what this is.
Yeah.
I think you just let it in and your body builds up against it.
Yeah. I have a good tolerance, but I still wash my hands.
Could be better.
If someone that you're talking to tells you like a story, and then they the next week they bring it up again, you don't have to say, oh, you told me about that last week, or you just told me 5 minutes ago, you asked me the same question. You don't necessarily have to do that. How many times we ask God for the same things, and maybe he doesn't always say, well, you asked me that, 20 times, that as well. Yeah. So, now if they maybe say like, oh, I think I might have just told you that, you can say, well, you can tell me again, or yeah, please, share, you don't always have to, just tell them, where they're doing something wrong. Sure. Because where their brain's at, I mean, the memory section might be gone, so there's this one gentleman at the one place I go to, and he has an electric wheelchair, and every time I come around, like, he stops and tells me the same story, and I have to, because even though I heard it before, like, smile, and he has some jokes, and I kind of know the answers, and I think that's okay to, because I'm showing love to him. Sure. Now, not lying to him or saying, like, oh, you never told me that, tell me, tell it to me, but say like, okay, well, what is it?
Yeah.
What else did I put? Yeah, being willing to know that some of the places you go to might not, smell, the sure. best, or might not look like the place that you would want to live at. Might look a little more like a hospital than maybe, like a retirement, place. And the trend is these days is to go less institutionalized and make things more look like someone's at their house. Homey. Or yeah, very homey. But still, you might know that you still might see, one of my friends is at a place, at a nursing home facility, and, it's maybe not the prettiest place to go into, but I'm not going in there because I want to be wowed by the scenery or enjoy this or that. Like, I want to go and, minister to him and, keep up the relationship and the friendship. So, kind of putting blinders on to some of those things, looking past that and looking to the people, I think is... And I kind of I think that's what Jesus did, for us. He was with the Father, and he decided to leave there to come to this sin-drenched world that reeked of all of our, humanness, and become one with us, and to take on, human flesh, and to, be with us, and what a great example he did, serving us, and how much we can as well serving people. Go into whatever place they're in, looking past all that stuff and going right to their hearts.
Well, I think that's a great place to even just wrap. You know what I mean? Unless you have something else to say or whatever, but that's the picture. Everything. We're very reactionary in our Christian walk. That because Christ has treated us a certain way, we ought to treat others in that way. In the way he has ministered and met our needs, we are to do the same for others. And it says in the scriptures too, he reaches down into the muck and the mire, and he lifts us up, and he puts our feet on a solid rock. And we also ought to be willing, even if we think it's yucky or icky or gross or whatever, we need to go in those places that are the hard to reach places. Leave our comfortable spots in our zones and everything to be willing to get down in it and go not just seek and save that which is lost, but also to just to care for and to love and to be with, the same way Christ has done for us so generously.
Yeah, and last thing I could say is like it can definitely be a blast. Just getting to know people and them expecting to see you and how you can light people up, and just the smallest thing, as Jesus said, even a cup of cold water, something little that you do for somebody can, just really speak to them. And even if, I've heard, even if they might not maybe remember your name every time they see you, they might not remember that, but they're going to remember how you made them feel when you met with them. And so like there can be so much fun, and what an open door that people can have to not only their church body, their family members, or people that are lost, that that places want people to come in and volunteer to. So they're pretty much saying like, come in and show Christ's love to these people, because we could use that. We need Christ's love here to help these people, where they're at in life. And again, some of those people there might already be strong Christians and be out there ministering to others. The first place I went to, the one of the first people I met was this strong Christian man who, he was at this place, and he's like, God must have me here for a reason. And he was out there ministering to his population there, and praying for people. And he was in a wheelchair, had a cane. He was opening doors for people, picking stuff up. He knew the Bible, and just what an awesome opportunity he had there. So, you never know who you might meet. And, you do hear some really great stories when some of the people you talk to. Some of the stories will blow your mind about some of the things people, have done in life. And there's so much good that can come from that, and how God can connect us with other people. And you never know, again, until eternity, like what you do for them, and just the repercussions can be endless. I don't know, I'm going on a tangent there.
No, I think it's awesome.
So
I think it's awesome, and really helpful. And sometimes like you're saying, we could end up being the ones being ministered to and encouraged as well.
Absolutely. God has a way of, you sow in other people, and, like you can reap a whole bunch of stuff, God moving through you like that. Really cool.
It's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate the conversation, and I think it was really helpful.
Thanks for asking me to talk tonight.